Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive Hobbycast. I hope you are doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, so on this episode of the Hobbycast, we are going to be doing a little kind of a top 50 post-mortem. If you guys remember back towards the earlier part of this year of 2022, I did the first ever Dungeon Dive top 50 Dungeon Dive and Adventure games list. We're going to be talking briefly about that. I'm going to answer a couple questions. I've had people responding to that top 50 ask me, like, where is game X? What happened? How come this game isn't on the list? We're going to talk a little bit about that. And that section is actually going to include three brief negative reviews for three big games that were not on my list. And then talk a little bit about a few games that I possibly overlooked. At least all three of these should probably have been included in the top 50, and for some reason they just weren't. So let's quickly do a recap of the top 50. I'm just going to go through and read the list from number 50 to number 1. So let's see. Number 50 is Runebound 3rd Edition, and then we have 49 with Dungeoneer, Tomb of the Lich Lord, 48 Aftermath, 47, Fallout with the Atomic Bombs expansion. 45, Shadows of Malice. Or 46, Shadows of Malice. 45, Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. 44, Advanced Hero Quest. 43, Assault on Doomrock. 42, Tomb. 41, Warhammer Quest, Blackstone Fortress. 40, Dungeon Universalis. 39, Aetherfields. 38, Folklore of the Affliction, with the fall of the Spire expansion. 37, Dungeon Run. 36, Legacy of Dragonhold. 35, Tales of the Arabian Nights. 34, Prophecy. 33, Space Hulk. 32, Mini Rogue. 31, Space Cadets. 30, Secret Unknown Stuff, Escape from Dulce. 29, Fortune and Glory, the Cliffhanger game. 28, Runebound 2nd Edition. 27, Dungeon Crusade Book 1, Genesis of Evil. 26, 4 Against Darkness. Speaking of 4 Against Darkness, I have a bunch of books out on the table right now because we're going to be returning to the 4 Against Darkness series next week. 25, Hellboy, the board game. 24, Darkest Night, 2nd Edition. 23, Rogue Dungeon. 22, Warhammer Quest, Shadows over Hammerhall. 21, A Touch of Evil, the Supernatural game. 20, Eldritch Horror. 19, Wander, the Cult of Barnacle Bay. 18, Zaya, Legends of the Drift System. 17 is D100 Dungeon with the World Builder expansion. 16, Darklight Memento Mori. 15, Cthulhu, Death May Die. 14, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. 13, Dungeon Degenerates, The Hand of Doom. 12, Quest for the Lost Pixel. 11, Kingdom Death Monster. 10, Dungeon Quest. 9, Talisman. 8, Shadows of Brimstone. 7, Escape the Dark Castle. 6, Hexplora, the Valley of the Dead King. 5, Machina Arcana. I'm going to say 3rd edition now since that has come out since I did the list. 4, Sleeping Gods. 3, Warhammer Quest Silver Tower. 2, Warhammer Quest OG. And number 1, Secrets of the Lost Tomb. Overall, I'm still pretty happy with that top 50. In the first video, I explained the way I did it is I just went to PubMeeple and used their comparison algorithm thing where you get 2 games and I choose one over the other game and it puts them in a list. I think I put in about 100, 150 or so games, somewhere around there. I don't remember the exact number. I don't have that original list. And I just went through very quickly, kind of off the cuff, didn't think about it too much as which game would I want to play between those 2 games, and I built the list like that, and I didn't reorder anything after the game. So if I were to put in that same grouping of games, that same 150 or so games, and do the same comparison today, a lot of these might be in different orders, especially the ones out of the top 10. The top 10 are kind of solidified, at least for now. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the list. There are a few that maybe one for sure shouldn't be on the list. And I already talked about this one during the top 50. And that was number 42, Tomb. Whenever I think about Tomb, I think of it in terms of its potential. It's a game that I think has a lot of potential, which is kind of odd because that potential has not yet been fully realized after the game has already been out for like, what, 15 years or so. There's so much cool stuff in Tomb. So many cards with just tons and tons of unique art. I did recently do an Art of Tomb video, just showcasing all of the great, cool looking art in that game. But just the fact is, the game is not that great. It needs a lot of help. And every time I get close to kind of developing a cool solo mode for the game, something else just comes up and it just doesn't quite work. So factually, Tomb should not be on a top 50. So I would definitely remove that. Another game I might remove is Fallout with the Atomic Bonds expansion. It would probably drop just below the top 50. It's still good. I still really like it. I definitely like it a lot more than some people, but I wanted to make room for a few others. And another one is Roombound 3rd Edition. I like 3rd Edition. It would still be in like a top 100, but 2nd Edition I like a lot more. And I think there's room for these 3 games that I possibly overlooked. And I'm not sure how I overlooked these. I'm not sure. Maybe I just forgot to include these in the basic, in the overall list where I was comparing. But somehow these 3 games failed to make it on the list, and I think they should be. And those 3 games are Walking Dead: Here's Negan, Hand of Fate Ordeals, and Fallen Lands. I'm really surprised Fallen Lands didn't end up on the list. I think maybe because I've put the game kind of completely out of my mind while waiting for the 2nd edition and the new big expansion that was supposed to deliver last summer. They seem to be pretty behind. That's fine. It's a Kickstarter. That's to be expected. So maybe I've been wanting to replay Fallen Lands, but I've kind of just been waiting for the next edition to come out because I think it's going to make things a little bit easier to manage. And it's going to add a lot of cool, more cool encounters, as if that game needs more encounters. If you like random encounters and you like pretty in-depth random encounters that include combat and non-combat elements, Fallen Lands is pretty dang cool. Hand of Fate Ordeals, that's a game that kind of saw the Dungeon Dive bump a little bit when I did my revisit of that game. A lot of people were going out and trying to find it, and the prices of that game have really started to skyrocket secondhand, especially for the expansion. So that's a really great game. I like the endless mode. I talked about it in my last video for that game. It has that kind of endless rogue-like mode, and really a really cool game with a great look and all kinds of clever mechanisms, and it really does feel like an adventure game and a good solid dungeon deck building game combined. A really great game, and that I'm pretty sure that should be in my top 50 because it is kind of that idiosyncratic game that just appeals to me possibly a lot more than it appeals to other gamers. And so I really do think that should be on that list. And Walking Dead: Here's Negan. Talk about an underrated game. It's so underrated that I forgot about it. That game is really good. Whenever I talk about Space Hulk, I often lament that it doesn't have a really good, solid, official solo mode. But Here's Negan really is a solo Space Hulk. It gives me that same kind of tension. It's got very simple mechanisms that rarely get in the way. It's got that really cool thing about how Negan is this force of chaos that is neither good nor bad, but he can really help you or really hinder your progress through the game, all depending on his mood and his whims. And that's so much like that character. It just does a fantastic job. And I'm not a huge, like I said in my review for that, I need to redo my review for that. Watching some of my older reviews lately, I've realized I think my delivery has improved a little bit. I would hope so, but I'm not very happy with my video for Walking Dead: Here's Negan. I think I need to revisit it and do that game justice, because that game is really good. So those were the 3 games that I possibly overlooked: Walking Dead, Here's Negan, Hand of Fate Ordeals, and Fallen Lands. And now a couple people have asked me why these games weren't on the list. And that is, let's see, the first one is Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. So I really do like 3rd Edition. But the last time I played it, one thing really bothered me, and that was the map. I really don't like the way the map is constructed, and more importantly, I don't like the way the map looks. I'm not a big fan of that putting together those tiles and this kind of like node system. It just doesn't look like a city, and it adds this extra step to the setup that doesn't add anything to the gameplay. And so when I'm thinking about playing Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, even though I really like the way the questing evolves, I love the gameplay, I like its streamlined nature, and I like the way the game makes me feel. When I think about having to set up that map, I'm kind of like, I'll just play Eldritch Horror because the map is already set up. Even though with that game, also I wish the map was like half the size. Seems like FFG and their Arkham File games, they have a problem with me with the maps, the boards, like just making them right, either the right size or the ease. So yeah, that is probably why Arkham Horror 3rd Edition did not make it on my list. Just because that kind of that negative feeling of setting up the map and just the way the map looks. It doesn't look like a city. It looks like some weird kind of like sci-fi dome structure or something. I don't know. I still really like the game, and I still really want to play it more often. I just need to get over that, I guess, about the map. Another one people asked me about was Dark Venture. Dark Venture, it's just a game I don't play that often. And it is, I think, kind of a long game. And there are some elements about the game that do kind of weigh it down a little bit, because it does have that huge big box feel in such a small box. And I recently talked about this game on my comparison of the science fiction small box games. And that big box feel of Dark Venture is kind of a double-edged sword, because while it does give you this grand epic experience, you also have to deal with that grand epic experience. So it's just not a game that I play a lot of. I would like to play more. I'm hoping that the 2nd edition kind of smooths over some of those edges. I know Rob Lemon is incorporating some of my solo house rules into the base game. He's doing some other things to tweak it to where the game, some of the setup of the NPCs is a little shorter, so you should be able to get through a game a little quicker. The same thing is happening, of course, with Roger on Dungeon Crusade. Really looking forward to the new rewritten Crusader's Handbook for that, and the true like Lone Wolf solo mode, and the new minion combat mode. Once all of that stuff gets officially put into the rulebook, I'm definitely going to dive back into Dungeon Crusade a lot, because I think that's going to really speed up the game and make the game better, I think. And I'm hoping the same thing happens for Dark Venture, because it is a game that I really like. I especially like the look of it. It looks incredible. It has amazing art. And speaking of that, I need to contact Rob Lemon about possibly doing a commissioned piece of artwork for the Dungeon Dive, or a t-shirt. That just came to me. I can't believe I haven't thought of that before. So, all right, well, we'll see what he says about that. Let's see, somebody else asked me about Legends Untold. And yeah, Legends Untold, that's just one that I don't play a lot of. It's a really good game, and I have been thinking about it more in the last few weeks. I've been wanting to get it back to the table, and so I think I will. And I know they're supposed to be releasing like the next set of those games to add the next kind of step in the development of the heroes and the difficulty. So that might be a really good time to revisit it. And I do like the game, but it's another one that I just don't play enough of to really include it into a top 50. And somebody also asked me about Pauper's Ladder, because I'm pretty high on that game. I'm impatiently waiting for the new expansion, the Moon Towers expansion, which just looks like it adds so much cool stuff to the game. That is one that I'm going to play a lot of, and Pauper's Ladder is one that I could see, the next time I do this list, it working its way into that game. It's just such a pleasant, effortlessly fun game. and I am all about effortless fun these days when it comes to my board games. Just it's such a charming, delightful little game. I absolutely love it, and I'm going to be doing a playthrough, I think, of the game because it's totally my speed. I can do a playthrough with probably only 50 mistakes instead of 100 because the game's easy. But I do want to show off the Moon Towers expansion when it comes in. Okay, so now it's time for the 3 negative reviews, because the big 3, there are 3 like huge, giant, super uber popular dungeon crawl board games that were, people are like, where are these games? Actually, there's 4. Maybe we'll do 4. Yeah, so that was, I didn't think of this other 4th one, but I know people have asked me. I guess people have stopped asking me about the 4th one because it's just not my kind of game. But those 4 games are Madara, Gloomhaven, Sword and Sorcery, and Mage Knight. Those 4 games, I think most people who really, really are into dungeon crawl games, adventure games, most people would probably put those 4 games in their top 10. Especially people who are into solo games often put Mage Knight as their #1 solo game of all time. People absolutely love Madara and Gloomhaven and Sword and Sorcery, and they're not even in my top 50. I don't even own any of these 4 games. I probably wouldn't put any of them in my top 200. Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion might make it in a top 100. Just based on the fact that it's just... Let's talk about Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven, I respect the crap out of. It is a very, very well-made board game. And I wish I was into it, because for the price I had Gloomhaven and I paid like $100 for it. It has so much content, so much thought and creativity went into making the game. I wish I loved it, because it would offer me so much gameplay, and it all fits in one box. Just, yeah, a very, very well designed game, but one that I don't have any fun playing it. And one of the main reasons is how you have to discard your cards while you are playing the game, because Gloomhaven has this like inverse excitement curve to it, where the first few turns are super fun because you have all of these possibilities. You have like these great things that your hero can do, but each time you rest, you have to burn through one of those cards. And so by the end, by the last few turns of a dungeon, the last few turns are super boring because you've already done all of your cool things and you can't do cool things anymore. And so your heroes become less heroic the more time you spend in a dungeon. And I don't like that. That is, it's like the exact opposite thing that I want to see. I was thinking of like, in the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, the first movie from Peter Jackson, when they're in the mines of Moria. And they finally escaped, or they're about to escape, and the Balrog comes, and they have to make those heroic leaps over that crumbling architecture. And imagine if like they were like, sorry, I've already done my heroic leap for this dungeon, can't make it. That's kind of like what happens in Gloomhaven. And I get it. You're supposed to have this trade-off. It's supposed to be this. Your actions are it's an economy of actions, but it just doesn't end up being fun for me. I also don't like the semi-co-op nature of the game, how you can't share gold. And that could be because I was not having a good time with the group I was playing with, because I was playing this kind of like slow character and everyone else was much quicker. So they were going around and hoovering up all the gold. And I was like, hey, can I get some gold? And they're like, well, try to get to the gold and you can have some. But I was like taking care of all the monsters for them. I did not like that at all. And I also don't like how the weapons and armor are all like one use, basically. You use them like items and they don't just stay equipped. I know sometimes you can flip them back over and use them multiple times. And I just recently, there was a game, I think it was at Dungeons of Doria, where you could use your armor, but then you had to take time to repair it. That's cool. That's a little thematic. But in Gloomhaven, the weapons and armor are more just like one-use items that you can use one time per game, and that's not fun either. So for me, a lot of the elements of Gloomhaven just constantly kind of got in the way of the fun, and it felt more like work, and I did not enjoy that. Madara. Madara is a game that I think the core mechanisms are fantastic. I think the dice pool system is cool, tons of loot, lots of things to discover. It's got a bright, colorful world with a lot of backstory. It has all kinds of great things. I love anime. It's got that anime look and vibe to it. But I don't want to read a novel while I'm playing a board game. When I want to read a novel, I've got 1,000 novels to read. And when I want to read a novel, I will sit down and read a novel. The amount of story that you have to read just to play Gloomhaven is way too much. It's kind of like a Metal Gear Solid 3 or 4, where it's like 3 hours of cutscene for every 1 hour of game or something like that. And there were multiple times when I was playing with my group where we would get together to play and we would read almost as much we would spend as much time reading as we would playing the game, and none of us were really into the story or the characters. And I also don't like how the game it forces your characters down certain paths because your characters act in the story a certain way, and so I never really felt like I was playing my character. I felt like I was living this life of a character who was already created and was already living its life. My character, who when I was playing would say things in the story or do things that's not the way I would have handled it. And I'm playing that character, so I don't want to see my character act in a way that I didn't like. And a lot of that does have to do with that kind of Japanese RPG inspiration for that game, because a lot of Japanese style video games, they feature things in cutscenes that you cannot do in the game. And I hate that. I despise cutscenes in which your hero is super heroic or does amazing things, but when it comes time to playing the game, you can't do any of those things. It's this kind of this disconnect, this ludonarrative dissonance or something like that, where what I'm seeing doesn't reflect the gameplay. And I felt like that in Madara constantly. My character would say something while I was reading, but I was like, well, I wouldn't play it like that. And so it's not really my character. I never really felt an attachment. I also didn't like, and this was the same thing with Secrets of the Lost Station, the follow-up to Secrets of the Lost Tomb. I don't like how the game governed what you were able to get in terms of loot. The loot deck was really boring in Madara. I never liked opening chests because it was always just some gold, and that was pretty boring. And I didn't like how the game divvied out the loot. The drops weren't enough for me. And it kind of seemed like it was so tightly balanced that I never really felt like I was getting more powerful, because every time I would get something new, since the game told me when I could get something new, the enemies or the scenario would also get something new at the same level, to where it just kind of felt like we were constantly at this same level, just with new stuff. And I like a game like Secrets of the Lost Tomb or Warhammer Quest, the OG, where you have the chance to get a super powerful weapon like on your first turn. You might get lucky on a draw, and then you can be overpowered for a long time. And I like that feeling in the game, and Madara just never gave me that. And then Sword and Sorcery. Sword and Sorcery, I don't like anything about that game. I feel like it's so on rails that I just never really felt like I was experiencing a sense of adventure. I do not like the writing at all. I don't like those anachronisms. Some of the pop culture references. I think there's like a reference to Siri Cortana, like just in these weird interjections of anachronistic humor and pop culture references just did absolutely nothing for me. I thought that the AI for the enemies was way over convoluted for no reason. It didn't really add any kind of like excitement to the game for me. It just made it really, really difficult to play. There was just an abundance of icons. I have never seen more icons until Tiny Epic Dungeons came out, and now I think that game is the king of icons. But the characters, I never really liked any. I had the base Kickstarter, the first Kickstarter, and I just never really felt like any of the characters were very fun to play. I would look at their powers when I was able to level up and have two choices, and A good game will always give you two great choices to like, oh man, I really want both of these. A bad game will give you, one great choice and one lame choice where it's like, well, it's obvious you're going to choose this choice. In Sword and Sorcery, just kind of, for me, just kind of gave me two choices. I was like, I don't really want either of them, so I guess I'll pick this one. But yeah, I don't like the way the maps look, the weird shape of the tiles. It didn't look like anything on the table. And I never really felt like I was doing anything in the game except following this really strict path down this scenario. It didn't offer any kind of exploration or sense of discovery for me. And so that is why Sword and Sorcery, I do not like that game at all. And Mage Knight is kind of similar to Gloomhaven. It's a game that I respect, but I don't like. And I just don't find it fun. It's so balanced. I should probably do a video sometime on balance, and I think balance is another word for boring. I know some gamers, a lot of modern gamers, really don't like swingy luck in their games, but for me, swingy luck is synonymous with excitement, and balance is synonymous with boring. Gloomhaven is incredibly balanced. It often comes down to the last few turns if you're going to win or not, and I don't like that. In this kind of adventure game, because if you make one little mistake, you're done, and there's really no chance to come back from it. And Mage Knight is very mathematical, but it also has a great sense of this kind of epic narrative to it, and you get a complete epic experience in one game. So I really respect that a lot. The components are beautiful. It looks great. I love the way Mage Knight looks. I wish I liked Mage Knight more than I did. I wish I liked Mage Knight a little bit. Even if I liked it a little bit, it would be in my collection because it would be one of those kind of like once-a-year games. It would never be a regular rotation game for me unless they came out with some kind of a simpleton version of Mage Knight. Maybe they'll come up with like Mage Knight Junior, and that might be a game more my speed. So that was just some quick negative reviews. I don't do a lot of negative reviews on the Dungeon Dive. I am going to do one coming up soon, probably for two Game Crafter games, two very, very expensive Game Crafter games that probably shouldn't even be on sale. So we'll do that soon. But yeah, I did want to revisit my top 50 and talk about those few games of where are they, talk about a few games that I overlooked, and just kind of revisit my top 50. I'm still pretty happy with the top 50. Every game in this top 50, except for the ones I mentioned before, I would probably play at any time. And yeah, so that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, or this, if you're watching the video or listening to the audio, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.